the sterile hum of fluorescent lights flickering like distant stars in a Memphis night sky, casting long shadows across a rain-slicked hospital corridor. It's 1968, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic and unspoken desperation. A young woman, no more than 25, her face pale as moonlit porcelain, clutches the edge of a threadbare coat, her eyes hollowed by the weight of a diagnosis that whispers finality. Nurses bustle past, their footsteps echoing like judgments, while in the distance a clock ticks toward midnight. She doesn't know it yet, but fate, disguised in blue suede, is about to turn the corner. In the dim glow of that hallway, Elvis Presley emerges not as the icon of sequined glory, but as a man stripped bare by his own hidden storms. His shoulders slump under the invisible yoke of fame. His eyes, those piercing blue pools, shadowed by the ghosts of Graceland's empty rooms. He is here not by accident, but by a compulsion deeper than the applause that once drowned his doubts. A whim, they would call it later. A kindness the papers might spin. But in this moment, as he pauses at the admissions desk, his voice low and laced with that southern velvet tremor, he utters words that will echo through decades. Whatever she owes, it's on me. The clerk blinks, frozen in disbelief, as Elvis slides a wad of bills across the counter. Crisp, anonymous, untraceable, no fanfare, no signature demanded. He turns, his hand brushing the woman's arm like a fleeting benediction, and vanishes into the night, leaving only the whisper of rain on pavement and a question hanging in the air. Who was she to him? A stranger, yes, but in the labyrinth of his soul, where loneliness coiled like a serpent, every face held a fragment of his fractured heart. This tale, shrouded in the mists of time, pulls at the threads of our own humanity, reminding us that behind the velvet curtain of legend lies a man who paid not just bills, but the silent tolls of existence itself. If this stirs the embers within you, share it with one soul who wanders lost in their own midnight. Let it bridge the chasms we all fear. And in the quiet of your watching, subscribe to these untold whispers, that we may journey together through the shadows of the greats. Now, let us step back into the fevered pulse of 1968. When Elvis stood at the precipice of rebirth, the world knew him as the king, enthroned in gold records and screaming throngs. Yet inwardly, he wrestled demons that no crown could quell. The army had humbled him, Hollywood had hollowed him, and the pills those insidious sirens sang promises of peace in his veins. Priscilla, his anchor in the storm, watched from afar as he slipped into the velvet underground of Las Vegas rehearsals, his voice a raw blade cutting through the smoke. But it was in Memphis, that cradle of his blues, where the true unraveling began. One autumn evening, as leaves bled crimson across the delta, Elvis drove his Cadillac through the fog-shrouded streets, the radio murmuring hits that felt like echoes of a boy long buried. Colonel Parker, his shadow puppeteer, had booked another spectacle, another chained to fame's millstone. Yet Elvis's mind wandered to the hospitals of his youth, the ones that claimed his twin, Jesse, before breath could crown him. That loss, a phantom limb aching in silence, drove him now, an invisible compass pointing toward the vulnerable. He pulled into the parking lot of Baptist Memorial, the engine's growl fading like a sigh. No entourage, no flashing lights, just a man in a simple black shirt, collar turned up against the chill. Inside, the corridors stretched like veins of a wounded giant, pulsing with the labored breaths of the forgotten. It was there, amid the beeps and murmurs, that his eyes found her Lanner Hayes, though he would never know her name. She sat alone, a folder of medical debts clutched like a rosary. Her dreams of a life in Nashville's nascent music scene crumbling under the crush of leukemia's shadow. Psychologically, it was a collision of mirrors. Elvis, the eternal orphan of adulation, saw in her the fragility he masked with charisma. Her eyes, wide with the terror of the abyss, reflected his own nocturnal wrestling stows, hours when the mansion's grandeur mocked his isolation. He approached not as savior, but as fellow traveler. His voice a gentle thunder. "Darlin', life's too short for tallies like these." The payment was swift, a gesture born of impulse, yet rooted in the marrow of his Memphis gospel upbringing, where charity was not spectacle, but sacrament. As he departed, the rain intensified, drumming a requiem on the roof, washing away footprints that might betray his path. Eleanor, dazed, touched the spot where his hand had lingered, a warmth seeping into her chilled bones. She would survive that night and many after. But the donor's anonymity became her private talisman, a mystery that fueled her fight. Little did she know, this act would seed a legacy, dormant for 3 decades, waiting for the light to unearth its roots. In the days that followed, whispers rippled through the hospital staff. A ghost in blue suede had settled a stranger's score. But Elvis returned to the glare, his '68 comeback special, igniting the world anew. The secret tucked away like a love letter never sent. Yet, in the quiet crevices of his psyche, where doubt gnawed like termites in oak, he wondered, had it mattered? Or was it merely another mask in the carnival of his life? This opening gambit of grace sets the stage for a drama that unfolds not in spotlights, but in the hidden folds of the heart. For in paying that bill, Elvis didn't just alter one woman's fate, he inscribed a cipher into his own enigma, one that time alone would decode. The camera lingers on the rain-streaked window of Graceland, droplets tracing paths like tears unshed, as dawn's pale fingers claw at the horizon. It's the morning after, September 1968, and Elvis stirs in the jungle room, its lush ferns a mockery of the wild freedom he craves. The bed, vast as his unspoken longings, cradles a body marked by the night's benevolence, a subtle lightness in his chest, as if the act had exorcised a specter. But fame, that voracious beast, stirs with him, its claws already sharpening for the day's demands. Psychologically, this was Elvis at his zenith of vulnerability. The comeback special loomed, a phoenix rising from the ashes of his cinematic missteps. Yet beneath the rehearsal's rigor, a chasm yawned void, left by Jesse's stillborn silence, the brother who might have shared the burden of adoration. Elvis's compassion for Eleanor was no aberration. It was a ritual, a balm for the orphan's wound. In the South's stoic creed, where men buried grief under layers of grit, such gestures became lifelines, tethering him to the humanity he feared losing amid the sycophants. Flash back to the drive, the Cadillac's leather seats creaking under his shifting weight, the dashboard clock mocking the hours stolen by insomnia. He'd passed the hospital en route from a late-night gospel session at the Assembly of God, where voices soared like defiant prayers against mortality. The building's glow pierced the fog, a beacon to the broken, and something primal stirred a echo of his mother's final days in this very place, her eyes dimming as bills mounted like gravestones. Gladys's death in 1958 had shattered him, imprinting a vow never again would want claim a soul under his gaze. He parked haphazardly, the engine ticking cool like a heartbeat slowing. Inside, the lobby's hush enveloped him, a rare anonymity granted by the dimness and his unadorned guise. The admissions clerk, A weary woman with laugh lines etched deep, glanced up as he leaned in, his breath carrying the faint tang of bourbon-laced resolve. "The young lady in the hall," he murmured, "the one with the eyes like storm clouds. See to her. The bill's $5,000, a fortune," then slid forth, crisp as new vows. Her protest was a whisper, "Sir, we need a name." His smile, crooked and cosmic, replied, "Just say it's from a friend who knows the roads to rough alone." Eleanor's room, just beyond, held the air of suspended animation, monitors beeping a dirge, flowers wilting on the sill like forgotten promises. She lay there, chemo's venom coursing through veins mapped with bruises, her mind a whirlwind of what-ifs. Nashville had beckoned 2 years prior, a demo tape clutched like a talisman, dreams of harmonies that might eclipse her factory drudgery. But illness had ambushed her in a mill shift. The diagnosis, a thunderclap, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, the thief that steals tomorrows. Debts, snowballed treatments, lost wages. A mother's fretful telegrams from the hollerin' till the ledger loomed as insurmountable as the disease. Elvis's intrusion was a fever dream, his silhouette in the doorway, broad yet bowed, exuding an aura that bent the room's gravity. Up close, his face was a map of micro-expressions, amusement flickering over sorrow, charisma veiling the abyss. "Hold on, sugar," he said, his drawl wrapping around her like kudz. "The good Lord's got a soft spot for fighters." No elaboration, no lingering. He was gone before gratitude could form words, leaving her adrift in a sea of bewilderment. Had it been real, or delirium's cruel jest? In the psychological theater of his mind, this act replayed as both salvation and self-flagellation. Elvis, the eternal performer, scripted kindness to counter the narrative of excess, the yachts, the jewels, the women who blurred into one another. Yet it gnawed. Anonymity preserved his myth, but at what cost to connection? As he sped back to Graceland, the rearview mirror framed a city awakening to another day of his legend. Oblivious to the quiet revolution in room 412, the hospital buzzed in his wake. Nurses trading hushed theories. Was it a mobster's largesse? A politician's ploy? Eleanor's treatment accelerated. Scans showed remissions, fragile dawn. She penned anonymous thank yous to the ether, her spirit rekindled, vowing to chase that Nashville star once strength returned. But the donor faded into folklore. A footnote in her file marked, "Anonymous benefactor, paid in full." Meanwhile, Elvis plunged into the specials filming, his voice cracking open like thunder over Beale Street. "If I Can Dream" poured from him, a hymn to the weary, unknowingly echoing his hallway mercy. The world cheered the resurrection, blind to the man who, in saving another, glimpsed his own salvation's threadbare edge. This gesture, seemingly ephemeral, wove itself into the fabric of his psyche, counterpoint to the darkness gathering. The pills multiplying like shadows at dusk, as months blurred into the haze of tours and triumphs. The memory softened, tucked into the album of unspoken graces. Eleanor, discharged into a world reborn in color, TV, and moon landings, carried her secret like a locket against her heart. Little did either know the bill's echo would resurface 3 decades hence, to shatter silences and mend unseen fractures. For in the grand narrative of lives entwined by chance, no act dissolves. It ferments, awaiting the vintage of revelation. Cut 2. The amber haze of a Nashville diner. 1969. Steam rising from chipped mugs like ghosts of resolve. Eleanor Hayes slides into a booth, her reflection in the window a paler echo of the girl who once twirled under factory fluorescence. Remission holds tenuous as a spider's silk, but the donor's phantom lingers, a riddle that both haunts and hallows her days. She sips black coffee, its bitterness a mirror to the psychological scar, gratitude laced with isolation, the thrill of survival tempered by the void of an unnamed savior. From her vantage, that hospital night replays in cinematic fragments, the door creaking open, admitting a figure whose presence warped time itself. Elvis, though she wouldn't name him for years, stood there, not as the pelvis-thrusting idol of scandal sheets, but as an archetype of weary divinity. His eyes, fringed with lashes like raven wings, scanned her with an intimacy that pierced defenses. In that gaze, she felt seen not as patient or pauper, but as a soul teetering on the ledge. "You've got fire in you," he drawled, the words landing like embers on dry tinder. Her response, a choked whisper of thanks, dissolved as he withdrew, leaving the air charged, electric with unspoken covenant. Psychologically, for Eleanor, this was Inception's jolt, a random act refracting her self-perception from victim to vessel of destiny. Raised in the hard Scrabble hills of eastern Tennessee, where daddy's mined coal and mama's mended dreams with threadbare hope, she'd fled to Memphis at 18, chasing the hum of opportunity. The mill's looms had been her metronome, but music those stolen hours, strumming a pawnshop guitar, whispered of escape. Leukemia struck like biblical plague, stripping illusions, treatments blurred days into nausea. Debts chained her to despair's altar. The bill's shadow loomed largest 10,000 by winter's bite-threatening eviction. Abandonment, the slow erosion of will. His intervention shattered that cage. As the clerk relayed the news, it settled. A gentleman saw to it. Eleanor collapsed into sobs, not of relief alone, but of a profound unraveling. Who pays for a stranger's tomorrow? In her mind's theater, he became the blue angel, a figment of folklore sustaining her through infusions and isolation. She visualized him driving into the storm, rain-veiling tears she imagined he shed for his own concealed battles. This projection, sharp as Freud's scalpel, bound her to him, savior and shadow. The man who mirrored her marginality amid his monarchy. Recovery was a gauntlet, wigs to cloak the bald truth, mirrors avoided like accusers. Yet the gift propelled her. Nashville beckoned anew, a demo in hand, voice honed by hardship's forge. She landed chorus gigs for upstarts like Waylon, her harmony a subtle thread in the outlaw weave. Nights found her in honky-tanks, nursing sodas and stories, the donor's enigma, her private psalm. He had eyes like the delta at dusk. She'd confide to a barfly confidant, sad, but seeing straight through. Elvis, oblivious, across the miles, toward the Colosseums. His body, a battlefield of exertion and excess. The psychological symmetry deepened. His generosities, often impulsive, stemmed from a core fracture of the adulation that isolated him. Mirrored her illness's quarantine. Both navigated worlds that devoured the vulnerable. His act bridged that chasm, if only for a breath. In Graceland's solarium, he'd pace under jungle vines, humming in the ghetto, its lyrics a lament for the overlooked Telenor, chief among them. Though unnamed, years accreted, like patina on brass. Eleanor married a session man, bore a daughter with his drawl and her fire, built a life in Music Row's underbelly. The cancer recurred in whispers, beaten back by sheer defiance, the memory her shield. She clipped articles on Elvis's pilgrimages, the gospel marathons, the anonymous checks to old folks' homes, sensing a pattern, a man's quiet crusade against oblivion. Yet doubt gnawed, hallucination, coincidence. The file, retrieved post-discharge, bore only anonymous cash payment, a cipher mocking her quest. By 1977, as Elvis's flame guttered in bathroom tiles, Eleanor's world tilted anew. News of his passing struck like a missed heartbeat, grief for the stranger who wasn't, a void where gratitude hung unfinished. She mourned in silence, toasting with well-worn vinyl, suspicious minds, its paranoia echoing her own unresolved longing. Psychologically, this loss amplified the bond. He became eternal, her guardian in the ether. Decades drifted, her daughter grown, husband faded to heart's quietus. Eleanor, silver-threaded and sage, archived the mystery in journals' ink, bleeding like old wounds. Little did she suspect, in a Memphis attic's dust-moted gloom, a ledger slumbered, hospital records, yellowed and forgotten, holding the key to convergence. 4 truths, deferred, do not dissolve. They distill, potent as moonshine, awaiting the pour that floods the soul. This stranger's salvation, viewed through Eleanor's lens, reveals the psyche's intricate dance, how one life's pivot alters trajectories unseen. In her endurance, we glimpse Elvis's true crown, not gold, but the quiet gold of lives, invisibly lifted, dissolved to the golden haze of a 1970s tour bus, rumbling through heartland dust. Elvis slumped in shadow, a crown of sweat beading his brow. The roar of engines drowns the inner tumult, but in stolen silences, the hallway phantom flickers Eleanor's face, a fleeting icon in his gallery of ghosts. That payment, a pebble in time's river, ripples outward, altering currents he never charts. Fame's forge tempers him further. Vegas residencies glitter like fool's pyrite, masking the erosion within. Psychologically, the act was catharsis, veiled as caprica, counter-ritual to the excesses that hollowed him. Post-hospital rehearsals intensified. The special's triumph birthed a renaissance, yet solitude gnawed deeper. Priscilla's gaze sharpened with unspoken pleas, the mansion's walls echoing with what-ifs. Elvis's generosities multiplied, cars gifted to fans, homes bought for kin, all threads in a tapestry woven from Jesse's absence. Eleanor's bill was one not anonymous. To preserve the purity, exposure would taint it with spectacle, reducing mercy to merchandise. For her, the immediate tide surged, treatments flowed unimpeded, vitality returning in tentative blooms. Discharged into spring's embrace, she clutched discharge papers like a charter of rebirth, the paid ledger, a talisman against relapse. Nashville welcomed her warily, a town of velvet ropes and velvet gloves, yet her voice, burnished by trial, carved a niche. Backing vocals for Dolly's nascent sparkle, harmonies threading Jolene's ache, she found footing. Nights, in a shotgun house off Music Row, she'd replay the encounter, his touch, electric as stage lightning, igniting a psychological pivot from fragility to ferocity, marriage to Harlan. A steel-gaiter wizard, with eyes like weathered oak, grounded her. Their wedding, simple under oaked boughs, whispered vows laced with her secret. I was given a second chance. I'll not squander it. Daughter Leela arrived in 71, a squalling symphony, her cries echoing Eleanor's own rebirth. Motherhood wove resilience deeper. The donor's shadow became lore for bedtime tales, the kind stranger who paid the moon's toll, instilling in Leela a creed of quiet compassion, yet undercurrents stirred unease. Dreams where the blue-eyed benefactor returned, demanding reckoning, only to dissolve in dawn's light. Psychologically, this bred a duality: empowerment, shadowed by obligation, the gift, a golden handcuff. Eleanor volunteered at clinics, aiding the indigent, her hands extensions of that anonymous grace. Whispers among nurses circled back. Sounds like the king. He haunts these halls. But proof eluded. The mystery a psychological fulcrum, balancing hope and haunting. Elvis, meanwhile, spiraled through the 70s glare, jumpsuits strained against a frame betraying indulgence, the colonel's web tightening. The 68 mercy echoed in lyrics. Don't be cruel, twisted to self-rebuke. He pressed on, planes slicing night skies, fans a sea of faces blurring into one. Rare moments pierced the veil, a call to Vernon, voice cracking over old debts settled, or midnight drives past Baptist Memorial, headlights sweeping the lot where fate converged. In those, the act resurfaced, a bomb against the void, proof he could still touch without taking. By mid-decade, Eleanor's career crested modestly, a solo single, Delta Dawn, her contralto weaving tales of lost graces, unknowingly paralleling Elvis's own veiled yearnings. Harlan's tours pulled them circuit-bound, Lila toddling backstage amid pedal steel's wail. The family unit fortified her, yet the enigma festered a loose thread in life's seam. Hospital inquiries yielded stone walls. Privacy laws, ironclad then, guarded the secret. Elvis's decline mirrored her subtle ascents. 77 found him a colossus, Clafe did the Lisa Marie, his skyward escape. One final gesture, perhaps, rumors of aid to ailing, fans hinted at the pattern persisting. His passing, that August thunder, rippled through Eleanor's world like a stone in still water. She wept for the man she'd half invented, vinyl spinning, always on my mind, till grooves wore thin. Lila, wide-eyed, absorbed the grief. Mama, was he the stranger? A seed planted, germinating in silence, in the aftermath. Eleanor's life steadied, Harlan's steady hand, Lila's laughter a counterpoint to old shadows. She archived clippings, the king's quiet philanthropist sensing kinship in the concealed. Psychologically, the gift evolved from mystery to mythology, sustaining through Harlan's 85 heart attack, her own brush with recurrence. It taught surrender to the unseen, trust in threads fate spins, as 80s bled into 90s. The ripple quieted, the act buried like acorns in autumn earth. Elvis's estate mythologized him, Graceland, a shrine to sequins, not souls. Eleanor, graying gracefully, mentored young singers, imparting the lesson, kindness is currency beyond coin. Yet in quiet hours, doubt whispered, what if the truth surfaced? Would it heal or hollow? This interlude of lives, diverging yet tethered, reveals the psyche's subtle architecture, how one night's grace architects destinies, its beams supporting unseen arches. For both, the payment was provisional peace, a truce with mortality's maw, holding till time's tide uncovered the depths, fade up, the musty hush of a Memphis storage unit. 1998, dust motes, dancing in flashlights, beam like fireflies in elegy. A archivist, clad in archival gloves, sifts yellowed files, hospital ledgers from the swinging 60s, unearthed in Baptist Memorial's attic purge. One folder, brittle as autumn leaves, slips free haze. Account number 4721. Inside, a notation in faded ink, balance cleared, September 15, 68, by E. Presley. Cash, the name leaps like a spark in tinder 30 years dormant. Now igniting. Cut to Eleanor's kitchen in Nashville. Sunlight slanting through gingham curtains, Lila now 30, a journalist with her mother's fire unfurling a manila envelope. Mama, this came certified. From Graceland Archives. Eleanor's hands tremble, coffee mug forgotten, as she scans the photocopy. The ledger, the signature, a corroborating affidavit from the long-retired clerk. The Blue Angel materializes, not phantom, but flesh. Elvis Presley. The king who knelt in her corridor, psychologically. Revelation crashes like a levee breach. Decades of myth shatter into memory's mosaic, grief and glory colliding. Eleanor's breath hitches, tears carving channels down cheeks, lined with life's quiet victories. Leela envelops her, the embrace a bridge across generations. He saved you, Lila whispers, but Eleanor shakes her head. No, darlin', he saw me. In that instant, the gift transmutes from enigma to epiphany, illuminating the psyche's hidden vaults. Gratitude, long, diffuse, coalesces into catharsis. The stranger's anonymity, once a veil of isolation, reveals itself as profound respect for her dignity. Unmarred by obligation, the story erupts. Lila, ink in her veins, pitches it to Rolling Stone, the king's secret mercy, a survivor's tale. Interviews cascade Eleanor's voice. Steady as gospel chord, recounts the night, the rain's percussion, his velvet timbre, the warmth lingering like media frenzy and snares, CNN vignettes, tabloid splashes, pilgrims to Graceland murmuring her name. Yet, amid the glare, psychological acuity sharpens. This truth doesn't exploit, it exercises. Eleanor confronts the mirror of her survival, not luck, but legacy, vowing to honor it, sans sensationalism. Flash to the estate's velvet ropes. Priscilla, silvered and serene, receives Eleanor in the jungle room. Ferns whispering welcome. Their meeting, intimate as confessional, bridges epochs. He did that often, Priscilla confides, eyes misting, quiet ways to quiet his storms. Tears mingle, hands clasped, women bound by one man's mercies, their psyches entwined in mutual mourning. Elvis's daughter, Lisa, joins, a trinity of graces, sharing anecdotes, daddy's midnight drives to aid the ailing. His heart, a hidden Hoover Dam, holding back floods of feeling for Eleanor. The unveiling peels, layers, flashbacks, assail Nashville hustles, fueled by phantom fire. Harlan's bedside vigils, echoing that hallway hush. Lila's probing uncovers more. Elvis's own hospital haunts, visits to children's wards, disguised in fedora and fog. The symmetry stuns to souls, scarred by proximity to death, their encounter a psychological suture. Therapy sessions, post-revelation, delve deep. It was as if he gifted me his resilience, she tells the counselor. Voice cracking on the edge of wonder. Publicly, Eleanor emerges phoenix-like, a memoir, paid in full, echoes of a king's kindness, charts the Archillness's abyss to truth's dawn. Book tours draw throngs, not for scandal, but solace. Fans clutch stories of their own veiled graces. She performs a new voice, a river deepened by decades. Delta Dawn, now laced with subtext, the stranger's dawn breaking her night. Yet shadows linger, the what-ifs, had she known then, sought him out. Psychologically, this breeds bittersweet acuity, acceptance of fate's script. Lila's articles, balanced and poignant, frame it as human tapestry, not icon worship, but intimate illumination. Graceland hosts a plaque, in memory of anonymous acts, Eleanor's name etched beside, a quiet canonization. As Millennium's eve tolls, Eleanor stands on Beale Street, neon flickering like memory's pulse. The revelation, 30 years gestating births, not closure alone, but continuum kindness as contagion, rippling outward. In her daughter's eyes, she sees the cycle. Lila, inspired volunteers at clinics, paying forward the forward paid. This denouement, sharp as scalpel on scar, unveils the mind's resilience, how deferred truths, when bared, do not wound, but weave wholeness. Elvis's gesture, once ephemeral, endures eternal, a beacon in the fog, guiding wanderers home. Slow pan across Graceland's iron gates at twilight. September 15th, 1998. 30 years to the Derot Iron Guardians, etched with stories untold. Tourists disperse like autumn leaves, leaving the lawn to fireflies, Morse code of memory. Eleanor Hayes approaches, arm linked with Lilas, the ledger's photocopy, a fragile relic in her grasp. Priscilla waits on the portico, silhouette soft against the mansion's glow. A tableau of women reclaiming the king's quiet canon. Inside the meditation garden, under moonflowers' pallid bloom, they gather Priscilla, Lisa, Eleonora Trinity, tracing the threads of one man's mercy. Candles flicker, casting shadows that dance like unspoken dirges, as Eleanor places a single white rose at Jesse's grave, twin to the brother's silence that birthed Elvis's boundless giving. He carried that loss like a crown of thorns, Priscilla murmurs, her voice a velvet requiem, and in your saving, he crowned himself. Tears trace silver paths, the air thick with the perfume of peonies and pathos. Psychologically, this convergence is apotheosis. The act's revelation transmutes isolation into interconnection. Psyches interlocked in a grander narrative. For Elvis, whose mind was a coliseum of contradictions, Sideration's roar, clashing with orphans, ache the hospital whim, was psychic alchemy, transmuting guilt into grace. In Eleanor's mirrored journey, from leukemia's lair to legacy's light, we discern his soul's blueprint, a boy from Tupelo's shotgun shacks, imprinting poverty's sting into perpetual philanthropy. No coincidence his generosities peaked in '68's Crucible, the comeback, a metaphor for his own remission from relevance's grave. Eleanor speaks into the night, words honed by decades' whetstone. He didn't save a stranger. He salved a reflection. The garden absorbs her truth, statues of Mary and angels, sentinel to the symmetry two lives, brushed by chance, forever altered. Lisa shares a cassette, Elvis's voice humming Peace in the Valley, its harmony a haunting underscore to their vigil. Laughter punctuates grief tales of his pillow-throwing pranks, his gospel, fervor humanizing the myth, rendering him not God, but kin, in the broader canvas. This story pierces the veil of iconography. Elvis, pillaged by paraphrase, emerges unvarnished, a man whose psychological terrain was pocked with pitfalls, yet paved with pavilions of pity. The bill's payment, mundane in ledger, monumental in motive, underscores his creed. Fame's fortune hoarded, his fortune hollowed. It echoes in his overraw, in the ghetto-esque cry. Kentucky Rain's lamental ricks as lifelines to the least. For Eleanor, closure blooms bittersweet. The memoir's success funds scholarships for ailing artists. Her voice a vessel for the voiceless. Lila wed now to a documentary dreamer. Films Shadows of Grace, a peon weaving their tapes. Yet in solitary dawns, Eleanor strums that old guitar, chords conjuring the corridor's hush, wondering at the cosmos. Calculus, why then? Psychologically, acceptance settles like dust on daguerreotype. The gift was not transaction, but transfusion, his vitality into her veins, sustaining through TEMPESTS as centuries turn. The tale embeds in cultural loam, school texts footnoted, ballads balladed, a quiet counterpoint to excess's elegies. Graceland's tours intone it softly, pilgrims pausing at the plaque, hearts tugged by the human hidden in the hero. Elvis's legacy, once sequined spectacle, deepens to souls, substratum proof that kingship true resides in the crouch of compassion, not the climb to crowns. In this garden's hush, as stars wheel overhead like the fate's own spindle, Eleanor whispers a final vow. Rest easy, darlin', your debt's eternal paid. The wind carries it upward, mingling with delta murmurs, a benediction binding breaker to broken. For in the grand, gripping drama of existence, no act it amplifies, echoing through eternities, a symphony of souls entwined. This untold story, unearthed from time's trove, grips us not with glamour's glare, but grace's gaze reminding that in each stranger's eyes we glimpse our own unspoken salvation, and in Elvis's hidden heart we find the map to our own.